Hi and welcome to yet another video. I'm actually glad you could make it. And so on today's video is actually the part 4 of building our image gallery app. We'll actually be displaying our pictures. I'm actually interested because our app is now coming to live. So we'll start by doing a short recap of what we did in our previous video. Let me display my screen. And by finalizing on the folder page, we used the template we had created in the other video and created a database, added data to our database, and were also able to retrieve it. What else? We also finished configuring the buttons to our folder page, and I guess we are done with the folder page. As you can see, everything works. Yes. So stay tuned because I'll actually start giving a link to my repo, my GitHub repo, where you can find all this code and also the images, the icons I'm using, such as this on this button. So look for the link in the description down below. And let's start. So on today's video, we'll actually be displaying our images, meaning that on this homepage, on the first page that is displayed after opening our app, we'll start listing our images horizontally. But as interesting and easy as it may sound, the logical part might actually be a little bit hard, since we need to line up our images horizontally, and whenever we reach the end, we need to adjust and go to the row below. So how are we going to do this? Let's jump right into the code. Okay, so go back to your database file, and a short reminder, we created 3 list variables: the folder path, folder name, and folder date. But today we'll be working on the folder path. So what's the essence of the folder path, since we didn't use it in our previous code? What this will be doing is that it will be storing all the paths from our database, so that once we insert the data on our app, we don't need to do that again. All the images will be automatically loaded whenever you'll be starting the app again. So let me explain what we'll be doing. To start off, we'll be looking for images inside these paths, and once we get them, we'll create a list where we'll store the images. So let's start. So right below this list, I'll go ahead and create another list and call it images self.images. This will also be a list. So the essence of this list will be storing all the images found, the images plus their path. How do we do this? We'll start by looping through the folder path, and after looping through, we will identify all the files within that path and only select the image ones. Then store it in a list where we'll later be able to load it in our app. Okay. So let me locate this function get folder. Self.get folders. Okay. So we need to carry out the function after this, since this function loads the path to the folder path. So to do that, we need to wait for the program to load all the folder paths so that we can start searching for the images. So I'll go ahead and create another function and call it get images. Remember the self attribute. Right below that, we'll start by looping through our folder path. So for I in folder path, self.folder path, sorry. So for so looping through the folder path loops through all the folders that you have added. After looping through all the folders that we have added, we need to loop again through all the files inside that folder. So let's import OS. We already did that. So I'll create another loop for X in OS. Let me write this, then explain. .list dir. So dir means directory for those who don't know. So this takes a path. So I'll give I as my path. So what this does is that it loops through all the files inside the given path, and our given path is I, which we have retrieved from our folder path list. So after looping through, we'll go ahead and write an if statement and say if x dot ends with I hope I'm writing the correct thing. Okay, let's try and see. If x dot ends with, so to try this out, as you can tell from the, let me interrupt that. As you can tell from what this word says ends with, we look for the extension name. By extension, we mean in the case of PDF files, you give the name of the file .pdf. For documents, it's the name of the document .doc. So the dot and the words that follow is the extension. So this extension is used to tell the program the type of file it is, and from the type of file is where the program knows what kind of applications can run this specific file. But in our case, we only want image files. So we'll look for the extension .png. Since this is case sensitive, we need to repeat this and add a PNG with a capital letter. I want to first run this before I continue. So for my next one, it will be a capital letter, caps lock P. Okay. So before we do anything serious, I want to try this out and see if it prints anything. Print X. Okay. Let me just finish. So apart from the PNG format, we also have the JPG. So I'll have to repeat that. So why am I using an OR statement? I'm using an OR statement to ensure that in case any of the parameters is met, the file will be automatically added to our list, meaning that you can read multiple image formats. My next one will be JPG with a small letter and also a capital letter, so I have to repeat that. And the last set will be JPEG. 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 So I'll go ahead and run this. So what this should do, since our get folders is what loads the path onto our folder path list, we need to run this function right below our get folders. So I'll inside the init function. So go inside your init function, and right below the self.getFolders, add another line of code and write self.getImages. Let's run and see. Okay, I don't want to run the whole file, so I'll just try and initialize this. db is equals to database. Remember, by initializing, I mean you assign it to a variable. Don't forget the double brackets. Okay, so it only found one image. I guess I know what we should try and do. Let me open my main.py. Since I have a lot of images on my pictures folder, let me add that. It's right here. Go ahead and add my pictures. What else? There's also another folder inside the pictures known as pic. These are the set of images we'll be using on this program. Okay. So since that's done, let me run this again. Nice, you can see. Let me expand this. As you can see the number of images of different versions, ranging from JPG to PNG with the capital letters, JPG capital letters, JPG small letters, what else? PNG small letters. Nice, this is actually nice. So this is actually the name of the image. But to load an image, you not only need the name, but also the path. So how do we go around that? Remember, in the real program, we're not supposed to print anything. What we're supposed to do is add these file names inside the image list so that you can retrieve it elsewhere and load the images inside our app. So instead of printing, we'll be appending it to our image list. So self dot image dot images dot append. Remember, append is used to add data to inside a list. So we'll not only be adding the name but also the path. That's something to note, because when we'll be later loading the image through our CTK image, you'll also require to give the path. So we'll start by the path. Remember, this is a cleaner way of adding strings to variables, keeping your code clean. So I'll reference this I, which refers to the path, then add a /, then the X. So let me explain this before I go ahead. So for I in self.folder path, this refers to the path of your folder. So what we need is the full path of the file. So this includes the path of the folder plus the name of your file. That's why we start by writing the I, which represents the path to your folder. Then inside your folder, we have an image. The image is X. X represents the name of the image. So it's like writing a full path. So I is the path until to the folder, then add a /, then the name of the image. And that should do it. So next one, you're supposed to load this through our main.py file. But before loading it, I think we should make some adjustments. Our main.py file looks a little bit flat, so we could maybe add like a title bar, write the name images, and maybe give the image count. We'll create something similar to this. So let's go ahead. I'll just look for it. Yes, the title bar. I'll go ahead and copy and paste. I'll come back to my main file. Right after creating our menu, that's where we'll start writing all this other code. So title bar, but the difference is this will be inside our, what was the name of our frame? Yes, the main frame, self.main frame. I don't know whether we should change the width and height. I guess we should adjust the width by maybe 10, 160. Then we'll obviously need to change this to images. And instead of adding a button right beside this, we'll add another label. But now this will hold the count, the image count. I'll call it count. Remember, we are placing it inside the title bar. So self dot title bar. I'll give it maybe a width of, this being 110, meaning that we're remaining with 50. I'll give it 45. And I'll give it a height similar to the title. So the height will be 28. What else? For the background, I'll give it something similar to the title bar. So I'll just copy and paste. And for the text, I'll give it a 0. Remember, it takes a string, so the 0 needs to be added inside a quotation mark. What else? I think we should specify the font size. Here it is, font times 15. And I'm guessing you'll have to interchange the colors. It might seem a little bit confusing, but just copy the code. You'll actually understand us after we run it. I also want to center this. So for this, I'll be placing it at an x coordinate of maybe 115 and a y coordinate similar to the one on top. So y is equal to 3. And finally, need to center this. So the main frame had a width of, let me check, 850. So, but this one is 160. Approximately 690. And the menu bar had a width of 40. So 690, add another 40, that will be 7 that divided by 2. Okay, let's place it at 365. Let's run it and see how it turns out. Nice. Yeah, it actually looks better, but not as I expected. I think you'll have to take it a little bit higher. You'll have to take it a little bit higher. And I guess I should maybe increase the font size by maybe 2. Okay. So next one will be loading the images. And for us to load the image, you need to place this inside you need to create a scrollable window so that we can create multiple, this makes it easier for us to add multiple images without worrying about the number. So I'll create a variable self.imageframe images frame. Remember, this is a CTK scrollable. So specify CTK scrollable. The parent is the mainframe, self.mainframe. Self.mainframe. we'll give it maybe a width of, the overall width was maybe 850, 810 excluding the menu bar, so we could maybe give it 790 for a width of 790. For the height, I'm not actually sure, but could maybe try. I'm guessing the height was almost. We could maybe try 400. Yes, a height of 400. We'll give it a background similar to the main frame. Let me just copy and paste this. What next? Okay, now let's place our frame. So before adding any images, we need to confirm that our frame is properly aligned and that we have no edges running over. So I could maybe give it an X of 50 and a Y of 50 also. And let's run it. Am I seeing it? No. Let me take this. So this could be maybe 770 and maybe the height could be 380. Until you're satisfied with this height and width, we can't actually continue. I think we could push this back by maybe 10. So I'll add both at 10. That should be good. Okay, let me minus a 5 on the width. So this should be 775. So for adding any images, I actually want to explain what I want to do next. So we want to display the images horizontally, but since the images might be of different heights, we need to give them a similar height so that one row has an identical each, so that all the rows have an identical height, and the only thing varying will be the width. And our program should know when the width is too small so that our images go to the second row. How do we do this? Let me show you. So remember, we already configured our database to add the images to our self.images. So we'll go back to the main.py. Let me look for the variable I used to initialize our database. I actually didn't import our database. Let me do so. Okay. So remember, to import, you first need to list the folder name, then the class you're importing. So I'll write from database import database. The first name database represents the file, whereas the second name database represents the class. You should note that. So I think it should be the first thing I initialize before proceeding. Initialize, like I'll initialize it here at the beginning. So I'll call myself.db. Database. Don't forget the double bracket. Okay. We've already initialized it, so what's supposed to come next? I'll create another function and call it load images. Let me go ahead and do so. Load images. So this function will handle processing the images right from the image list, making them appear on our frame. Remember, this is made easy since we can actually access our list from this separate file main.py, but by referencing the database, the class. So I'll just go ahead and write, since we want to loop through the whole list, I'll write for I in then the image list. But how do we access that? I'll reference our database self.db.images. Yes. So after getting the images, you're supposed to open the images. So how do we open the images and make it readable to our program, our Python program? We do this by first create a variable img. I'll call mine img and assign it to image.open. So the .open function takes a string which refers to your file path. So I'll list I, since our images list contains the file path. So after opening it, we need to check the size. So I'll create another variable. Let me call this self. Not self, let me add the attribute self. I'll create two variables, width and height. Self.width, add a comma, self.height. So let me write then explain is equal to img dot size. So what does this do? As you can tell from the word size, it returns the width and height of the image we opened. That's why we started by creating two variables, gave them a name relevant to what they've been doing, which is the width and height. And so the width variable will actually be assigned the width of the image, whereas the height variable will be assigned the height of the image. After doing this, we need to check for the height. I'm thinking that we should maybe give all the images a height of 200. I don't know whether that is too big, but let's try. Okay. So remember, this should be inside the for loop. If self dot width, not width, the height. Self dot height is bigger than 200. So we want it to have a constant height of 200. So in case the image is bigger than 200, what should it do? It should actually look for the percentage increase and use that percentage to reduce the width so that the image maintains its aspect ratio. As you know that if you, let's say, have an image and end up minimizing the height without doing the same to the height, without doing the same to the width, you'll actually note that the image isn't as good as it was before. So to make it good, you need to maintain the aspect ratio, meaning that if you reduce the height, you also need to do the same to the width, but you need to reduce them in the same quantity. That's why you're using the percentage. So if our program finds it bigger than 200, it's first of all supposed to get the excess height. So I'll call mine e height. Is equal to our self.width minus the height you want it to be, which is 200. Then so the e height represents the excess height. After finding the excess height, what we'll do next is find the percentage increase. So how do we find this? So I'll call mine percentage PERC is equal to the e height divided by 200 times 100. Is that correct? No, the e height divided by the whole width times 100. So I'll add some brackets, then write e height divided by self dot width. The reason why I've not added a self on the e height is because I don't think we'll be needing it anywhere. So apart from here, so the e height, the excess height divided by the whole height, not width. But for that, you also need to change this. So the excess height is equal to this height, total height minus 200, whereas the percentage equals to the excess height divided by the overall height times 100. To times, remember, you need to use the asterisk. So after finding the percentage, what do we do? After finding the percentage, we now use the percentage to reduce the width. So I'll go ahead and write self.width. I'll reassign it is equal to so how do we do this? Okay, so this is the percentage that you're supposed to use to decrease. So you need to find the remaining percentage after you decrease, which is the same as 100 minus percentage PRC. Remember, it needs to be divided by 100. I'll also insert this inside the brackets. Then you multiply by the self dot width So you can actually tell the program that self.width is equals to self.width. When we reference self.width, we are referencing the value before we change anything. So it will look for the previous value, then pass it through this equation and find the answer. Then assign the answer to the variable, removing the previous value. I hope you understand. So, and I guess I'm done. Okay. So this only happens when the height is bigger than 200. So when the height is bigger than 200, we also need to tell the program that the height is 200, that we have given it a constant of 200. But now the other issue is, what if the image is smaller than 200? What will you do? We are yet to know about that, but we'll check that later. Yes. Okay. So we've already processed the image. So next is adding the image to a scrollable frame. So before adding, I think we need to add a set of variables. Let's go ahead. Let's go back to our init function, or let me create it right here below. So I'll create a variable. So the first variable will be the remaining width. We'll actually see why we need this, but later. So initially, the remaining width will refer to the total width, which is 775. I'll give 770. 770. So whenever we add an image, we get the width, then we minus it from this. This tells the program if the space is enough. If the space isn't enough, it tells the program to go to the next row. So we also need to create another variable which holds the row. We are obviously starting with a row of 0, and also same to the column, self dot column. So whenever we add the image, we'll be referencing these variables and checking the current position, which refers to the row or column, or whether we need to go to the next position as in the next row. After doing that, let's go back to our function load image. So after doing this, we need to create a frame. I think I'll call this img frame self dot img frame. Will you create a frame or a label? Okay, let's create a label. So ctk label. Then we need to tell it where it will. We need to give it a master, which is our image frame, which is a scrollable frame. So go ahead and write self dot image frame. Image frame. We'll give it a height and width similar to this. So its width will be self dot width and its height will be self dot height. You also need to tell it that the text is that you're not giving any value of the text, meaning it won't display any text. And you also need to give it the image you're displaying. But before displaying any image, we need to use the CTK image. So I hope you remember what we do to load images into this program. We go ahead and create a variable self dot image equal to CTK image. And I've actually noted something. So these two should be outside the if loop. So just push them back. So this if loop only changes the width and height, but the rest should continue. So for us to load the image, we first start by giving it the path. So the path is our I. So I'll go ahead and give it I. Then it takes a size. The size is a tuple, meaning it takes two values. Meaning it takes more than one value, but to be specific, this tuple takes two values, a width and a height. And our width will be self dot width. So for those who don't understand, the main reason why we're using the self dot width is that we give the parent the dimension similar to the image, meaning that when you're adding the label should have the same height as the image, the same height and width as the image. That's basically why we're using this. So self.height. And I guess, yes, now we go ahead and write your image attribute. Reference your image. I need to change this variable. Oh no, I'll just write the self.image. Self.image. Yes. So next we need to place this. Now, this is where the other task comes in. First, you need to check the width, if the width is favorable. So, if self dot, what did I call it? Remaining width, rem width is bigger than our current width. So our current width is self dot, wait, not bigger than. If the remaining width is smaller than, not bigger than, sorry for that. So it tells it that if the width is smaller than the image, what does it do? It goes to the next row. So self dot row is equals to self dot row. I know there's another way of adding your variables to a +1, but I guess I'm good with this. What else? Mm-hmm. So it's supposed to change the row to the next row, which is down below, and also change the column to a 0. Ensuring that our program starts from the beginning. So the logics might be a little bit difficult, but nothing you can't handle with time. What else? Now we need to place it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and place it. So self dot image frame dot place. No, we're using the dot grid. Remember, for items to be displayed inside the scrollable frame, you need to use the dot grid. So the row will it be bringing up such an error? Nope. Self dot row self dot call. Okay, so after adding our image, it should also tell the program to change our column to a +1 to ensure that it doesn't stack up the image. Self dot column also self dot column +1. What else? Let me cross check. I think everything should work well, but so next is figuring out when we should load our image. I'll put this right below here. So self dot load image. Let's hope for the best and run this. Already starts with an error. Class ctk let image. I've known where the issue is. We were not supposed to add the path, but the opened image, which is through this. So I'll just write self.img. Remember, before writing this, before adding an image to your CTK image, you need to first open the image for you to add it here. That's why the program is bringing up an error. I'm actually thinking of changing this, and inside our init will maybe require our app to add another attribute called app, and now this is what we are going to assign it to our app with a capital letter. So why am I doing this? This is because by loading our images just before the main loop, this makes our app freeze and not load. So by doing this, we'll actually remove all these, and down here, instead of initializing our app by assigning it to a variable, we'll basically assign it to CTK. So it's just similar to what we did there. The only difference is that this will not be done inside the scope of the class, meaning that we'll be expecting better performance. So initializing, so creating the variable and initializing our app. I'll call it exe. The name of our class, main window. Shift main requires an app, a double. Then app.main loop. I hope this is actually better. There goes nothing. As you can see, the app has actually loaded way faster. There's still some errors. So we'll actually create a thread. Yes, we'll actually create a thread. Let's create one. I'll create a function. No. Yes, I'll call it thread. So for those who don't know what a thread is, let me first import it before I explain. So if you've ever been interested in running, how will I explain this? So applications on our machines are basically ran in threads. What are threads? Threads are like a way of processing your programs where a single machine can run multiple tasks on at the same time. So what handles the different tasks at the same time? These are the threads. So by using threads, this means that you can load the application and do your image processing on a separate, meaning that your app will generally be faster and it won't actually cause any issues on the main app, on the UI part, since the UI part brings up issues when you're trying to do something intensive that takes out of time. That's why you need to keep updating. So how do we create a thread? Go ahead and import threading, and I'll create a variable. So I'll call mine self dot image processing, but I'll only write PROC. So I'll go ahead and say threading.thread dot thread. Now here you give it the function and the values. So if for your function, give it the target is equal to the name of your function. In our case, our function is load image. We're not writing the def. I'll just write self dot load image. Then, but it doesn't take any arguments, so that will be true. So one thing, you need to set the daemon to true, so that in case we close our app, the thread also closes. If we don't do this and the thread still runs in the background, it will actually bring up an error on our side, and that's something you want to avoid. So what else? Is there anything key to note? Yes. So let's just try without making any changes. If it brings up the error, will change. So that's only creating a thread. Now for the thread to function, you need to start it. So your variable dot start, and now we'll initiate our thread. For the height and width, we won't actually give it a self attribute, since we won't be needing it outside this scope. So okay, let me finish doing this. So go ahead and remove the self. So when using the self attribute on your variables, this is mostly preferred for variables that will be accessing elsewhere, but in our case, the height and width won't be needing it. That's why I'm making the changes. And you also need to add something. So if it starts at the 0, meaning that the remaining width should be same 7. I'm guessing we wrote 750. Let me confirm that. Where did we write? Yes, 770. And if we add it to the grid, we'll do the self dot remaining width. We minus the width of the image, so that so that we get the accurate measurements when we'll be adding our next image. So minus the width. So this width refers to the image width. Let me check. Before we run our file, go ahead and change this to img, not image, for it to match with our frame. And let's run this. So go back to your folder page, and right here at the place you need to raise your reference your frame, self.frame dot tk raise. So the word raise, it tells you that it brings it to the top. So whenever you are creating widgets, the last widget is what appears on top. But if you created an image if you created a widget at the beginning and you want to display it somewhere else, maybe after creating other multiple widgets, you need to use the .tk raise to ensure that whatever you're trying to display comes to the topmost. That's what we've done. So ensure that you have that line of code. Let me check something before I run it. Okay, so create a thread, then assign a variable and use threading.thread. It takes a target which refers to your function, and we use the diamond equals true to ensure that whenever we close our application, our thread stops working. If we don't do that, this means that our thread will continue running in the background and it might actually bring up errors. So ensure the diamond is true and the target is the self.load image, which is our function. Then let's run it. This is actually good, but we obviously need to make some changes. I'm guessing this height is too big. Yes, this height is actually too big. We need to maybe divide this by a half to maybe 100. Then we try it again. So let me close this and make some changes here. So this will be 100. So height 100. And let me run it again. Nice, nice, nice. You can actually see the difference. But now you have some issues since our some of our images are going way beyond. So to work this out, we need to create a vertical frame, and in this vertical frame, we place images, and each frame will occupy a row. So we'll have to create multiple frames per row. Let's go ahead and do that. It actually sounds somehow difficult, but we can manage. Okay, so here we'll start by creating a frame. I'll call mine row frame. It's a CTK frame. So the master will be the self.image frame. I'll give it a width of 770. I think 770 is the best option. Yes, width of 770. And a height of 100, since that's what we agreed as our height of 100. Okay, a height of 100. What else? We also give it a background similar to our scrollable. What else? So since you're placing it inside the scrollable frame, we'll use the grid. Since we'll be using one frame per row, we obviously know that the column will be 0. Whereas the row is what will be changing. So since the column isn't changing, we'll delete this since we won't be needing it. What else? This is actually somehow difficult. I need to think this through. So for the image, we won't be using the grid, we'll be using the place. For the x value, we don't know what it is, but for the y, we are sure that it is 0. So I'll create a self dot x, capital X, no, small x, 0. Since our column isn't changing, we'll change this to self dot x equals to self dot x plus width. And this will also be self dot x what else? The other part is only adding this, so self dot x. So this dictates the position of the image on your frame. So by changing the x, it means that you're moving the image horizontally towards your right. So to explain this, but let me first of all finish before I explain this. I'll create another variable, current frame. We give it blank. So let me add this line, self dot current frame is equals. So this stores the current frame where you're adding your image to, and this should change after every row. So I'll just copy and paste this and write it. Where should I write it? Yes, I'll write it right here, just below. I need to also move this tab. Don't worry, I'll actually explain before running this. So let me start from here, the thread. So we said that to run multiple, how do I explain this? I started by saying, okay, I say that Our machines have a way of running multiple programs at the same time without affecting the performance, and this is through the threads. So these threads are like separate channels where programs are ran independently without affecting each other. So the advantages are your program end up running faster, meaning the overall performance is increased. And in terms of our application, you don't have to keep updating you the your app. So in case you're doing something that takes time and you're using the same thread as your main app, it actually makes your app to stop responding because it doesn't get updated because of the program taking a lot of time. So to solve that, to solve the not responding issue, you run that function on its own thread, meaning that no matter how much time it takes, it doesn't affect your app. Your app still runs smoothly. I've explained that. So we go to our load image. We decided that in each row in our scrollable frame, we want to add a frame where we'll be putting our image instead of putting our image directly on the scrollable frame. After creating this frame, we add the images to this frame. And the images are actually from the db.images, which is a list variable, does these operations, and we decided that the height is 100. But if the height is not 100, it gets the percentage increase, which is used to minus from the width to maintain the aspect ratio. Then this line loads the image. Then this is what displays the image. So we also need to change this. So it would be image frame, but it will be self dot current frame. Yes. So whenever the row changes, the row frame changes, it will just reference to the current frame and all will be well. So by creating these 2 times, it actually holds different values, so you don't have to worry about that. Let's run this. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. This is actually nice. Okay. So we'll obviously have to give this a little bit space on the width and height. What else? And I'm also asking myself why it's leaving out these spaces. Let me go through the code. Okay, so go back to here and you'll give it a pad x of 5, pad, no, not 5, 3, pad x of 3, So let's run this. The padex isn't working. I don't know why. I'm also trying to understand why this is leaving a gap here. I'll have to check the code again. This should be a pad Y, not a pad X. So I also need to repeat this line. So that it doesn't stick on the previous. So that when we are changing to the next row, we also change the variable again. Since if we don't do that, the image will be stuck on the previous row. Nice, nice. You can actually see the edges are leaving some space. This is actually nice. Looks nice. The only issue is the padding. I've known where the issue is. Right here, I didn't add a pad y again. Pad y equals to 3. So this should solve it. Three actually looks like too much. So I'll maybe give it a I'll give it a 2, not a 3. I have to change here and the other one. Yes, this one. Looks nice. Yes. Those edges are better. One more thing. Before finishing all these, we will also configure the image count. So let me create a variable image count, self dot image count. So obviously it starts with a 0, but with time we need to add this. So in this loop, for loop, we need to add dot image count is equals to self dot image count plus 1. And after adding, we need to configure our text. What did we call it? We called it the self dot count. So self dot count dot configure text is equal to string self dot image count. Everything should be okay. Let's run it. You can actually see the number is changing. That's good. I'm thinking of whether I should add a space in between these edges or whether I should leave it as it is. And whether that space is too big, we should make it smaller. We should actually make this smaller. But let me look. It's enough. So thank you for staying tuned up to this far. I'm glad you could watch this. The app is actually coming to life, so I hope to see you on the next. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification, and till we meet. For the code, look down in the link below. You'll actually find my GitHub repo where you can check out the code and make corrections to where you didn't understand. So goodbye.